Down to business and lay out a couple of our talking points. Starting with the wannabe champions and potential invincibles who didn't have to be all that special to beat Jose Mourinho. Whereas premium import Sergio Aguero and his teammates were at their dazzling best as they hit Villa for 6. Meanwhile, in Spain's Supercopa, the dark arts were on display, much to the approval of the man whose side was on the receiving end. I get the feeling that is going to be one lively conversation. I mean conversation because you guys are going to send us your thoughts as you always do. John Wilkinson is with me. He'll have plenty to say during the course of the show. Another special guest, as you might be expecting, joins us in just a moment. But let's just have a quick look at the results from this weekend in the Premier League. It all started off with another goalkeeping error from West Ham United as Sheffield United won 1-0. And it ended with one of the least surprising scorelines, I think, of the weekend. Aston Villa 1, Manchester City 6. Perhaps the most surprising might have been Southampton's win at Leicester, but for reasons that we'll get into later, maybe it shouldn't have been that much of a surprise. Let me just tell you something about the top of the table here. Manchester City can get to 95 points, which means that if Liverpool pick up 35 more points, i.e. if they just keep on winning, they will pick up their first ever Premier League title, John. And if they do that, it will happen on 11th of April, which is Easter weekend. Down at the bottom half of the table here, last week we stood here and said this is going to be very competitive. I'm slightly worried that if Watford continue their form, Southampton have already got themselves up there, it might actually not be that competitive, John, because I look at the likes of Villa and Norwich in particular. I just got a feeling they're in free fall. I don't know if they're going to be able to get out of this.
And you're not putting Bournemouth in there?
I would do, yeah. But I just felt they got a little bit more in terms of, 5 years of Premier League experience. Maybe they can find a way out of it.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. They're just that bad that it helps Watford, it helps West Ham, it helps everybody up to where Arsenal is in the in 10th position. I just think it's too close to call right now, John. I am with you. Watford, I do see them. We keep saying it. Watford could get out of this. I just think Burnley aren't great. I don't think West Ham are great either.
All right, thank you very much. Now, as is always the case on a Monday, I'm going to turn to our guest from not England, but Europe, who is former Premier League goalkeeper Mark Schwarzer. Now, Mark, using my extensive knowledge of home furnishings, I can tell that that is a Tyrolean Alps chimney of some kind or oven behind you, right? Yeah?
Yeah, you're right, mate. Yeah, you're right. Probably because I helped you, because I probably told you beforehand. That's why you know where I am.
You spoiled it, Mark. You've ruined it.
Right, well, he's off skiing. Now, I should just tell you this. We got this wonderful message coming on Facebook this week from Arthur Lim, who observed that he would like to talk to you about that save in the penalty shootout back in 2005. It was the one from Zabaleta of Uruguay, which earned Australia's Socceroos a trip to the World Cup finals. And as he could say there, he was there. Australia became a football nation. Johnny Warren, the late Johnny Warren, smiled from above. Mark, do you get asked about that amazing moment repeatedly?
I do, yeah. Of course, it's become one of the most iconic moments in Australian football. Not the saves per se, the qualification. Let's not forget everyone involved, guys who took penalties, and obviously Johnny Aloisi scoring a magnificent one to finally seal our path to the World Cup. It was first time in 32 years. That's why it's become so iconic.
Brilliant stuff, brilliant stuff. Mark Schwarzer, the hero to all those Aussie football fans. Right, let's get to the Premier League and Liverpool. The Red Machine, I wouldn't say it necessarily rolled on, ground on. Again, another one of those 1-0s, another one of those results that meant more than perhaps the performance might have done. John, we're going to get into the Spurs side of this a little bit later on. Okay, i.e. what Jose Mourinho could have done differently. Let's talk about Liverpool. Yeah. Because they are getting the job done, aren't they? They
are getting the job done, yeah. Look, we've seen enough in recent weeks to know that they're beatable, but they're not getting beaten. Yeah. And, I mean, they're just that good. I mean, what more can you say? They don't taper their style for anyone. And even when they're looking a little bit tired, a little bit shabby, they find a way. You know, top side, best side around right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And even before Spurs had a go at them at the end of the game, they probably would have got it won anyway. Record breakers, this is where it's getting really interesting. That's why I did that thing at the top about when they could win the league here. Let's have a look at some of the numbers behind what they've been doing, because it is, of course, a full 38-game, not in-season 38-game season, but you know what I mean, Mark, don't you? So 61 points they've now taken from their first 21 games this season. Nobody in Europe's top 5 leagues has done better than that. Mark, I'll let you digest the rest of the stats there, but whichever way you look at it, they are putting up and will continue to put up some amazing numbers.
They will. I mean, you know what? You can talk about the goals they score, the front three. I mean, the one that stands out for me is that 6 consecutive clean sheets as well, of late, and I think they're not playing their best football, but they always will score goals. And if they're not conceding, they can continue to win games 1-0. But they've always got something in the locker. Like yesterday, they should have won the game on Saturday, by a couple of goals. They just didn't take their chance, but they're still defensively that solid that they don't concede.
Yeah, and Alisson was brilliant. That's something that we really need to talk about as well. Ernest has written in, thanks very much, Ernest. For Liverpool to remain unbeaten and break all sorts of records, they only need to beat Manchester City at the Etihad. That's the 4th of April, that game scheduled for there. John, you have to agree, don't you? Because you can talk about them not being that fluid or fluent going forward, but Alisson, if he sweeper keeps and makes the saves... Yeah, and Van Dijk puts in the tackles.
Certainly. Can you just say hello to Roland, by the way? He's just tweeted. All he wants to do is just say hi, John.
Hi.
I completely agree. And I agree with Mark. I think we talk about the front three a lot, and we talk about how they'll always find a way to pop up with a goal. But it really is as simple as being solid defensively. Mark will tell you, when you're doing 5-a-sides during the week, get your back couple right. Strong couple of defenders, and you'll be fine. And Liverpool, look, it's not rocket science. Klopp's not coming out with tactical masterclasses at all. Motivates well, treats his players well, gives them enough rest when he can.
And they train very well, obviously. You can see that kind of. John, let's move on to the other side of this one, because we stood here on Friday, or at least I did, and talked about what Jose Mourinho might try and do here. Now, on the one hand, we've got the uncloppables, okay? But on the other side here, let's zoom in a little bit more detail on this side of the story. To dare is to do unless you're Jose. This is John Cross in the Mirror, but Daniel Storey also wrote a similar piece in the Independent, saying there wasn't too much audere and facere to dare is to do about the Mourinho approach here. So the thing about this, Mark, is we spoke the other day about how Jose would play a low block against Liverpool, how he would try and negate them, but it ended up with sort of 2 banks of 5 effectively at times, with only Dele Alli getting forward. Do you think he was too negative? Because by the end of the game, they took the game to Liverpool and felt they could have scored at least.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think they were a little bit. I mean, the problem they had as well, obviously missing Harry Kane is a huge loss for them. If he were playing, they are a different side, Spurs. There's no 2 words about it. So the approach is going to be different. They're trying to nullify any of Liverpool's attacks, congest the area, not allow Liverpool to play in those little pockets. But ultimately, you're inviting that pressure on, aren't you? You're continuously inviting it on. Ultimately, because of the quality of play that Liverpool possess, they're generally going to score a goal. And then, like we just talked earlier, it's very difficult to score against them.
One of the problems we've got now is that there's this perception of Jose Mourinho that he's gone a bit really here. This headline here, you were the future once. A little bit harsh for a man who's achieved what he has, but you can understand where they're going here, because if you take a little look at the contrasts and the obvious parallels, Andy Dunn writing in the Mirror, Jurgen showed just why Jose is yesterday's man. The stats when it comes to Jose, whoever he's managing, taking on the big 6 clubs, they've really slipped here, John. So in his pomp, look at those numbers there down the left-hand column. The younger, dark-haired Jose, in particular, his first spell at Chelsea there, he only lost 10% of his games against big 6. Now, if you look down the right-hand side, that number's far closer to 50. And in fact, in his games away against big 6 sides, he's incredibly cautious and tends not to get that much out of them.
Yeah, the smiling Jose back in the day. I can't help feeling Jose Mourinho. I think when you become very, very successful, there's a lot of people that try and just protect their lot and try and protect their legacy and trying to plump those numbers so that he's always got a retort. He's always got an answer to some of the critics, and he can just reel off some numbers. And that's kind of what it was, I feel, against Liverpool, and it has been the last few seasons with him.
And also when he was at United, they were a struggling club, wasn't he? So he always put up sort of defensive showings there. Some people are getting a bit carried away, I think, with this business about Mourinho and whether he's turned for the worse. This is Jonathan Liu writing a piece in The Guardian saying Spurs fans should fear 4 years of Mourinho's cynicism, as if it's really going to turn into a toxic environment, a la Mark. I mean, we need to talk about this, a la Manchester United. Are they laying it on a bit thick here?
Yeah, listen, people love to knock Jose on every opportunity. I mean, listen, in his defence, you're comparing Jurgen Klopp, who's been at Liverpool for how long now? 4, 5, 6 years? And he's got the momentum. He's starting to have success now. They won the Champions League last year. They're going to win the Premier League this year, plus whatever else. And we're talking about Jose Mourinho, who's only been at Spurs for a very short period of time, unable to really stamp any of his own sort of methods on that team. He's trying to still play patchwork. Let's give him a little bit of time before people start to really lay the boot in. But people love to do it because it's Jose.
Yeah, okay, that's understandable. A little bit more feedback here. Yao Liang saying Jose lost so much of his charisma that he's starting to look and sound like David Moyes. Come on now. Johnny Michael Tan, the old special one has to now bow to the new supreme one. They're talking about Jurgen Klopp. I think one thing is for sure, it was a strange decision. Let's talk about the Christian Eriksen decision in terms of tactically what he did in this team. Okay, he threw young Tanganga into the team. Okay, that gave him a 3 at the back, but then he had Eriksen. What was the role here, John? He's touched the ball as many times in his own box as he has in the attacking third, really.
It's almost as if he was trying to put him in this kind of quarterback position, to have more possession deeper, to try and nullify Liverpool. And it didn't work because we all know it's a pretty disinterested Eriksen at the moment. Yeah. It's not someone who, I don't like him in deeper positions anyway. I think they're comfortable positions for him to come and collect the ball, certainly for someone with his technical ability. Look, my wife could go in deep positions, flick her hair around, drag her foot over the ball in ineffectual areas. You know, it was a strange decision for me. He needs to be gone pretty sharpish, I feel.
Again, though, turning this back to Jose Mourinho, I mean, he's got players, and we saw in substitutes appearances in the previous game, Lamela and Lo Celso in particular, coming on and showing what they can do. This was Lo Celso's contribution all over the park. Very progressive, very forward-thinking, and really he should have taken his chance, Mark, shouldn't he? He really should have taken his chance. But couldn't Jose have gone for that energy a bit earlier in the game?
Yeah, quite possibly. But I mean, the thing about Lo Celso is the problem is he's had so many injuries. He's had a stop-start career since he's been at Spurs. So maybe there's a thought that, you know, to put him in a big game like this, high intensity, that he may not be able to produce or last, or there may be a risk of him getting injured again. I'm not quite sure. I think it was a strange decision to put Eriksen in, but I mean, Jose's talked about he's got this very good relationship with Eriksen. They're very honest with one another. Maybe he said to him, you go out there, give it everything, and yes, I'll facilitate, I'll allow you to leave, we'll sell you. However it is, I'm not sure. You just don't know.
Well, let's have a little look at this one, Mark. I'm going to come back to you on this now because this is the headline now. Inter roll out Matt to land Eriksen. I mean, by all accounts, there's the medical and personal terms agreed. So do you think it's done, Inter? If so, would he have played or not played at the weekend, dependent on this deal?
Well, again, I don't think Jose. I think it's more to do with Jose's relationship with Eriksen. We've heard him a couple of times over the last couple of weeks say that it's very clear they understand each other. They've got the very honest conversations ongoing. So I think he feels like he's giving him trust. They have trust for one another. That Eriksen will give him everything that he wants, and even if he leaves at the end of the season, he'll just try and get out of him what he can between now and then.
John, there's another person we need to talk about here. This is Jedson Fernandez, something of an unknown quantity, Benfica star on an 18-month loan deal coming in here. But a 21-year-old, what do Spurs need now? They need a striker who can come in and play just about every game between now and May, don't they?
Yeah, they do. Strikers doesn't miss chances, John. Look, as Mark's alluded to then, without Harry Kane, they're not the same proposition. But they have won important games without him. They won the semi-final of the Champions League without Harry Kane. They have beaten Man City without Harry Kane. Yeah. So they have won important games without him. But they need a striker that can come in, play with Harry Kane, but also without Harry Kane, get the business done and scare the life out of defences.
They need to make a good decision. They need to get a few things right. Last couple of bits of feedback before we get to our first break of the show here. Wee Kyung, Spurs could have won if their forwards were able to finish. Yeah, absolutely. Maybe not won. I think maybe drawn. Two very good chances in particular. And Zubair down the bottom here. Josie needs time. Most spectators are sceptical, but he is the man with the job. Let's just applaud the fact that we've got Kun in a million. We've got Sergio Aguero and have had for some time now playing football in the Premier League for all of us to enjoy, or at least most to enjoy, right? And for that matter, as he and Manchester City turned it on against Aston Villa in winning 6-1 at the weekend, Mark Schwarzer, can I just say that I want to thank Pep Guardiola for coming here and bringing this kind of football, because I've never seen any team in England play this kind of football before. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think you're right. Listen, it's always difficult to compare teams from the past, and Arsenal were phenomenal when they had the likes of Petit Henry and so on, and Perez. They were phenomenal. The Man United side, the way they played, the momentum, the power. Yeah, listen, Manchester City have been probably the most entertaining team to watch in the last at least 2 seasons, if not 3 seasons. So yeah, it's been impressive.
And isn't it amazing to think that they, like Liverpool last year, could be brilliant but come second? That's the way it works. This guy, Kun Aguero, all-time great because he's now moved ahead of Henry in terms of goals as an overseas player. He's moved ahead of Shearer in terms of hat-tricks here. So there it is, most Premier League hat-tricks, one ahead of Shearer and beating the likes of Fowler and Henry. All-time overseas goal scorers, his 2 goals now clear of Thierry Henry. And I suppose now, John, he probably targets second place in the all-time Premier League goal scorers if he could overhaul Rooney, who's, what's he on, 208 or something like that. He's not going to catch Shearer, is he?
No, he's not going to catch Shearer, but his goals per game ratio would be better. I know a lot of people will talk about Shearer, yeah, but he did it for Blackburn, Southampton and Newcastle, lesser sides. But, you know, there's competition to get goals in that Man City side. You know, Gabriel Jesus is starting to pick up some form and momentum now. And I love the way that a lot of people wrote Kun Aguero off when Pep Guardiola came in. A lot of people thought that perhaps he doesn't work hard enough. He's not Guardiola's type of striker. He changed his game a little bit, but he's still the one. He's still the main man.
It's a very good point. And this, you know, Pep Guardiola, of course, was talking about him and talking about what a privilege it is to have a guy like him around here. Watching Aguero is a privilege. Enjoy him while you can, which is a bit worrying. Does that mean that he's off at the end of next season, for instance, here? And, of course, as always happens in football, he was asked if he's the best. Of course he was going to say Messi is the best. He categorically said that. And he had Sergio up there as one of the best of the rest, basically. Mark, it's just modern football and social media and the world that we always have to sort of say him or this, that or the other. We don't have to say who the best is, do we? Aguero, where do you rank him in terms of the best you've seen, though, in your career over in England?
Yeah, right up there. Right up there, one of the best I've ever seen. Plus, played against, been on the receiving end of many defeats against against Manchester City when Aguero played. So, you know, phenomenal player, and yeah, definitely a privilege to watch and to have played against.
Let's talk about Manchester United right now, because you never know quite what you're going to get from one week to the next with them. But this was a game that I think we could have seen going this way, John. And as it was, Rashford, what I liked about Rashford was even before he scored that first goal of his, he was doing flicks and tricks, he was getting to the byline, and he just looks like the best player on the pitch, doesn't he?
Yeah, and really, and it's interesting you said he was doing tricks and flicks and doing a little bit of showboating there. It's, you know, it was shades of Thierry Henry when he would drop into deeper positions. He's starting to play with that kind of swagger, that sort of leadership almost. And he hasn't always looked like a player that really enjoys playing football, but he's starting to now, and that's good for still a very young boy.
OK, well, let's have a little look at a bit of feedback on these Manchester United strikers. Joginder's been in touch with us here. I have Rashford and Martial in my fantasy team. 1 week they're exhilarating, next week blank. If Ole can make them more consistent, United are not far off the top 4. Yeah, I feel for you there. I think Martial would be even more infuriating than Rashford in recent times here. The best is yet to come. This is Harry Maguire, who made an amazing recovery to play in the game, hailing Rashford, saying that he's got everything to have a career at the highest level. It led to a very interesting situation because, of course, what happened with this guy is he did get to an amazing record. Mark, I'll come back to you here because we're about to talk about Rashford in the context of young players making good at Old Trafford. How good is Rashford in your opinion?
You know, I think it's hard because I think he's one of those players. Listen, he scores goals. He's quick. At times, he does disappear in games. But that also has probably something to do with his age a little bit, getting a bit more consistency, and also carrying a massive burden at Manchester United. Let's be honest, they're in a transitional period and have been for some time. The young players have had to mature very, very quickly, and Rashford's one of them.
OK, and he also, remember, made it to 200 appearances. What was interesting about this was at a very young age, it was Marcus Rashford. This led to a very strange story because he put a tweet out saying, beyond proud to become the 3rd youngest player to hit 200 Manchester United games, because he was taking that, and he said he followed Giggsy and George Best. He was taking that from Manchester United's official stats, which went out on social media. Unfortunately, they were wrong, because as a certain D. Whiteside, and that would be D, the wife of the great Norman Whiteside, pointed out, They got it wrong. Norman was actually the youngest to get to 200, and Manchester United's social media guy, Mark Froggatt, had to go on social media and apologise and say, very sorry for missing him off the list. We will update it. Hope you have a nice weekend. So this, for the record, is what it really was. It was Norman Whiteside. And many people will overlook a guy who has really moved away from football a lot since he stopped playing, who at 21 years and 4 months was the youngest to make it to 200 games. And if you want to know more about this guy, have a little look at World Cup highlights, look at FA Cup highlights, and you'll know just how special Norman Whiteside was. Okay, but he's there with the likes of Cristiano Ronaldo and Rooney, John. How does Rashford compare? This is a young age, them at that age.
I think, as Mark's alluded to, Rashford carries a bigger burden, I think, than Cristiano Ronaldo and Wayne Rooney did. And I mean that because I think Rooney and Cristiano Ronaldo had a much better supporting cast. Yeah. Cristiano has actually spoken about the support he got from Roy Keane behind him during training in games. And I think Cristiano Ronaldo, I just think he had the sort of supporting cast that just drove him to be better. The likes of Paul Scholes behind him. Rashford doesn't have that supporting cast, and it's a shame. I think it really is a shame because Marcus Rashford's, we always talk about him being, he's got to be good now. He's got to be world class now. He's got to be great now. He doesn't just yet. He needs a little bit of room to grow.
This has got you guys talking. This has certainly got everybody out there because, comparing with someone like Cristiano Ronaldo is always going to get people going. Keck says, what is a successful season for Manchester United? That's a good question there. What is a good, successful season for Manchester United? Isaacs, pray for Carabao Cup, FA Cup and Europa League champions. So I think he was actually replying to Keck's there. Mark, do you agree? What would be a good season for Manchester United?
Well, yeah, definitely. Finishing in a European place, winning a couple of cup competitions, winning one would be great. I think it's going to be a tall order for Manchester United to do any of those. To be perfectly honest with you, however, if they do accomplish it, I think they can be relatively pleased.
Okay, Jason's been in touch as well. I hope Rashford becomes another Giggsy, world-class, one-club player.
The difference is with Rashford and Ryan Giggs, Alex Ferguson drip-fed Ryan Giggs games, had to drip-feed him games because he said he was just a waif of a player. Physically, he was a waif, had to drip-feed him games, and that helped Giggsy phenomenally. It really did. Extended his career. Rashford's not going to be as fortunate. He has to play games. He has to be the best player on the pitch each time. It
strikes me, John, the funny thing about when we talk Manchester United, from one week to the next, we go from the highs to the lows because they're so inconsistent. Sometimes it's high, sometimes it's low. But unfortunately, one of the consistents or the constants has been the criticism of Ed Woodward and the ownership of the football club. And he will have noticed that one at the weekend in terms of people cheering about it, chanting about him. But Arteta at Arsenal is also facing problems here because there are some things in football that you can't change overnight. Arsenal looked brilliant, John, for, I don't know, an hour or so the other day. Torreira suffers an injury and suddenly Arsenal looks pretty ordinary again. Emery or Arsenal?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the thing with them. They've just got that inconsistency, haven't they? They're still trying to find any sort of momentum. They have a good performance. Listen, the game against Chelsea, they were brilliant for probably 60 minutes, 70 minutes, and then they let slip and they come away with no points. And that plays on the mind. It plays on players' confidence. And I think, Arteta's finding out what it's really like to be the main man, to be the manager, to have to motivate these players and try and find the best out of these players every week. Now it's going to be even more of a challenge with Aubameyang being suspended.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit here because the loss of Aubameyang is a massive blow for them. Yes, Martinelli has shown great signs of improvement and what have you, but to see this upgraded to a straight red, that's the last thing they wanted to see.
No, I don't think there's any great intent there from Aubameyang, but the referee his main job description is to look after the welfare of the players.
Mean, this is a freeze frame that makes it look nasty, as the headline says.
Yeah, and Max Meyer, and we said off air, John, he did really well to get up from that. It just shows how durable he is. Aubameyang, you can't context always matters. We know that, but you can't look at Aubameyang as a referee and go, like, that's not his game. He's not that type of player. The fact of the matter is, it was slightly overboard. Still frames always make it look worse. It was slightly overboard, over-aggressive.
We'll talk about that in the context of how referees apply the rules in just a moment here. But let's deal with something that Mark brought up right now, which is the absence of Aubameyang. And if we take a look at the fixtures to come, by no means easy. Sheffield United away from home. They've been very strong this season. Chelsea away, tough one. Burnley away, tough one. So this is going to be a real test for Mikel Arteta. You can be absolutely sure of that. John, before we lose our thread here, let's go back to this business about, you know, what constitutes a sending off and what doesn't constitute a sending off, and when we see tackles that go over the top, because I think you were taking it somewhere interesting. Obviously, club rivalry means that you get comments from fans of other clubs saying, hang on a minute, how come that was a sending off but another one wasn't? This is Henry Finn saying, are there two different laws on football referees, one for Liverpool and another for the rest of the Premier League? He's talking about Andy Robertson, of course. Arsenal player makes a bad tackle, he gets a red by VAR. Same thing happened in the Liverpool match, no red, no VAR. Why? Okay, so what you need to do is you need to go to the experts. We went to Keith Hackett, who for many years was the head of the referees in England. Now, his explanation was this. The referees, first of all, look for a lack of control or recklessness. Now, that brings with it a yellow card. But the minute they see what they consider to be excessive force, then they upgrade to a red. And he simply said that although Robertson, Mark, was reckless in going over the top, he didn't show excessive force, whereas Aubameyang did. So that's their explanation. Do you agree?
No, I don't agree. I don't think either of them showed excessive force. They both. I mean, Aubameyang's is a mistimed challenge. Robertson's a lunge. You know, he's miscontrolled the ball. He's trying to then, you know, regather afterwards, and he over lunges and goes over the ball. And listen, what does it mean? Does it become reckless or excessive when the opposition player, has a broken leg? Is that then excessive? I mean, I think that's ridiculous. I think both challenges are red cards. I don't think either of them meant it. There was no intent, but they're both red, in my opinion.
And to carry on from what Mark's saying, it's very difficult if you're near and you're the referee, you haven't kicked a ball in that game, to police what is excessive force or not. I have had a referee book me because he said, you didn't need to go to ground to make that tackle. You could have made that tackle standing up. I was thinking, well, you're not my coach. I wanted to go to ground. So it's the same with excessive force. How do they
support your team no matter what, folks? Good advice, that, because we do tend to swing from pole to pole each week. Fans going like, I wish we had Aguero one week and I wish we signed Vardy the next. Respect to Southampton or Everton fans today, no matter what. And that's right, you know, stick by your team because things do turn around here. Look at this, Danny Ings. Don't say anything, John. How Ings change. He just keeps scoring goals and he's absolutely loving life right now. Southampton at it once again. So Southampton, 78 days after the heaviest loss, John, in their history. And you can say something about Danny if you want. Turn it around and actually go and win at Leicester. Brilliant.
I won't say anything about it. Looked like he had a bit of water retention there, but he's in good form, isn't he? No, it's incredible. What a bit of work Hasenhüttl's done in between that time. I mean, incredible. And the type of coach that you want to do well because he's felt every game. You see him grizzling on that sideline. He's up and down. Yeah. He must have been a nightmare to live with the last few months. But what a great result.
Yeah, he did really well, and he wouldn't hide from everything. He said we're going to look at video and remind ourselves of the 9-0. And the other thing about it is he's got such a formed player. Raymond saying, did Liverpool make a huge mistake in selling Danny Ings? He's now second top scorer in the Premier League with 14 goals. Still only 23, is he? And he was loved by the Anfield faithful. I think Liverpool might argue that they didn't make a huge mistake, Mark, but still credit to Danny Ings. Would you still want him around at your club if you were a Liverpool fan?
I don't really think he fits that mould. I don't think he's that type of player to play at Liverpool. I think he's a fantastic player for Southampton, obviously. That's why he's doing so well. I think he suits them down to the ground. He's done a phenomenal job. And you're right, Ralph Hasenhüttl has done incredibly well. Could have easily have lost his job, but the club, you've got to give him credit, stuck with him as well, believed in him.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get into Imran's comment here. Kudos to Southampton for sticking by Hasenhüttl after the 9-0 thrashing. Look where he has taken them now. Sacking isn't the solution all the time. Well, that is something that the former Premier League midfield star Jamie Redknapp was writing about in his column in the Daily Mail this week when he turned around and said sticking with Ralph after that 9-0 is looking like a masterstroke here. Board rewarded for resisting the temptation to sack Hasenhüttl. Yeah, absolutely. Let's have a look at the form table and see exactly how they've turned things around. Over the last 6 matches, Southampton are the 3rd best for form behind the 2 best teams in the country. And we'll get to Watford in just a moment. John, that's a remarkable turnaround, isn't it? You know, from the really depths of 9-0.
Yeah.
All went with that.
It could have all just spiralled further from then on. They could have been lower than a snake's belly. They really could have. I mean, it's an incredible turnaround and good football. And good football. You know, they haven't just gone from back to front really quickly and just lumped it up there. They've played their part really well.
Okay, so Watford in 4th place in the form table, and that is truly extraordinary when you consider they'd gone through 2 managers by the time we even got to the halfway stage of this season here. Watford revival gathers pace, but Howe seems stuck in reverse gear. Okay, that's another conversation. Eddie Howe does look as if he's getting it all wrong here, but celebrations from Watford, who did it once again. Mark, talk to me about Watford, because this was a contest between 2 teams who wanted it badly. Somehow Watford emerged comfortable winners, though.
Yeah, they did. And I think, you know, I mean, Bournemouth played into their hands. Goalkeeper makes a big mistake for the first goal, trying to play out at the back. Watford, to their credit, played on the front foot. You know, there's a lot of similarities to the way they're sort of setting up, the way they're playing to when Nigel Pearson was in charge at Leicester. You know, he's got that core group of players, Cathcart, Dawson, Foster, Chabalawa and Deeney, you know, English-British players who can handle a bit of, I think, you know, the home truths from a manager, and Nigel Pearson will be letting them all know. He'll be keeping it simple, getting them organised, and it's paying dividends. Yeah, absolutely. Imran again has been in touch. Pearson and Shakespeare have made Watford hard to beat and play to their strength. Deeney's return is crucial, and great to see Ismail Assar settling in. Yep, that's right. It's an incredible swing, this one, an incredible turnaround here. This was a club that you felt had just lost the plot, losing the managers, turning things around, and it's this guy Pearson coming in here. Now the thing about Pearson is that he is making it happen again. Where did we last see this one? Leicester, when he turned things around at the end of the season before their title triumph. And John, if you look at that, played 9 there, won 7 of them. Add to that the 6. He's now won 11 of his last 15 matches as a Premier League manager. Only Jurgen Klopp has done better than that.
It's good company, isn't it? That's not bad at all. And you hear him speak as well. You hear him post-game interviews, very, very calm. Methodical, very, very calm. And that's what the players need right now. Because there's always a case for Watford, the form that they're in, the results that, again, they start thinking they're a little bit better than what they are. He won't allow that. And, you know, going back to what Mark was saying about Bournemouth playing into Watford's hand, Nigel Pearson set up very cutely. He was setting these little traps. He was daring Bournemouth to play out from the back, and he set up these little pockets, and it paid dividends. It was brilliant, absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. Jerome's been in touch about what Watford are doing right, and he says Watford are doing a Leicester, West Bromwich style great escape. I'd love to see them stay in the Premier League. Well, let's have a little look ahead. Nigel Pearson was at pains to say, look, we might have got out the bottom 3, but it does not mean that we've got the job anything like done. We've got Spurs. What a fascinating game that is. Spurs going to Vicarage Road then. Aston Villa away. Probably a good time to be playing them. And Everton. Maybe they won't fear Everton, who away from home aren't quite as fearsome as they are at home. What do you think, John, for Nigel? How's he plotting his way forward here with United and Liverpool to come?
I think it's super tough. It's super tough. I'm interested in that game against Everton because I think we're going to find out a lot more about Everton in that game. How well-rounded they are, by the way. They beat Brighton for me, and they beat Aston Villa, and those are massive games because if you beat the ones just around you, automatically you're shooting right up that table right now.
A lot of praise, a lot of love coming in for Watford and for their players. This was Kex saying Doucouré was unplayable in this game. Yeah, absolutely brilliant, scoring and creating. Now, what's interesting is the comments that have come out from 1 or 2 of the English players in that dressing room here. Troy Deeney, who is talismanic at the football club, saying for the first time in 8 years, I've been treated like a proper man. Now, you get this kind of macho stuff out of Troy, but I was interested in Ben Foster's comment here. Now, the former England goalkeeper came out and said this: we knew we'd got the players, we just needed someone to stick a rocket up us, and that's all it is. Mark, what I'm really interested in about Pearson is it's very easy to get lost in the machismo stuff. He's a big, physical, imposing character. You'd know that, of course. You know, I think he was at Middlesbrough, wasn't he? But when I hear him speak, he's just calm. He makes sense. There's clarity. I'd like that as a player. I'd like to know what I have to do, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's what he'll do. He'll get them organised. He'll give them the instructions, keep it simple, and the players will go with it. They'll believe in it. They'll trust him. And what he's not afraid of confrontation. He actually thrives on it. So he'll get in your face. He'll be confrontational, and he'll let you know who the boss is. And the other important thing for me is Deulofeu. Deulofeu is Leicester's Riyad Mahrez when he was in charge, putting an arm around him. He's getting the best out of him. He's starting to be more consistent, and that's going to be...
Awesome company, get the job done. In this case, it was the Supercopa de España played in Jeddah, of course, against Atletico. But this was the major talking point. 0-0, 115 minutes in. Alvaro Morata runs through on goal, and Federico Valverde dashes back and absolutely hacks him down. Takes the red card for it. Off he goes straight away after a little bit of a flare up there, and away he goes. Right, okay. Right thing to do or what? This is a major hot topic, this one.
Yeah, it's a major tournament final. Two major clubs, two city rivals. It's got to be done. It's a professional game. And I'm sorry for all the purists out there that they're going to be like bemoaning this and having a little grizzle about it. As a professional, you do what you can to give your team the edge.
Which is why, as he left the pitch, Diego Simeone, Atletico's coach, ruffled his head and later on said, I told him, you did what you had to do. I would have done the same thing. And he was named man of the match. Right. This is when it hit social media and became really interesting, this one here, because you had this comment actually from Fede Valverde saying, I apologise to Alvaro Morata, who's a mate of his, by the way. I know it's not good, but I didn't have any other option. And of course, he's been backed by professional footballers all over the world and by fans all over the world saying, yeah, that's the thing to do. But I was fascinated by this one. I put this one out on Twitter as well myself, because I'm really fascinated in this business about someone has run back, hacked someone down. It was a horrible challenge. I saw this described as the greatest ever professional foul. What do you make of it? Mark, what did you make of it? You'd have memories of Solskjaer tapping Rob Lee's ankles as he went through a few years back, I guess.
Well, I wouldn't say it's the greatest, professional foul ever. I mean, it's a Super Cup. It's a domestic Super Cup. It's not like Champions League or a World Cup final. And the team. I mean, if it was a World Cup final, then I can kind of understand it. Listen, it's right. Like you guys were saying, like John was saying, completely accept it, expect it. And Simone saying what he did and tapping him on the head, he's saying it because, like he said, he would have done the same thing. He also would have not expected but demanded it from his own team. Had it been the reverse, exactly the same thing would have happened.
Okay, I think we're finding at least one of our viewers is in agreement with you there. This is Imran saying if Simeone approves Valverde's action, then the young Uruguayan can feel better. The Argentine was a master in such actions himself during his playing days. Jason, Valverde could so easily have been the villain instead of the hero if Rad had lost the game in the last 5 minutes.
1 yard difference. 1 yard's difference. If he hadn't got back quick enough, busted a gut and brought him down outside the box, he would have been the villain.
Tell you the thing that also left a bad taste in my mouth about that Supercopa was his namesake, Ernesto Valverde, the coach of Barcelona. He takes his team there as league champions, right, as a team that topped their Champions League group, and yet under his very, very nose, they're talking to Xavi, their former superstar player, about the job. As it is, Xavi turns it down, for the time being at least. He was offered it in January. And this is the guy that they're looking to see off. It's Barcelona. It's Barcelona, Mark, so we're not surprised by anything, are we, in terms of how they deal with coaches?
No, not at all. I mean, they literally do whatever they want to do, and they're not afraid for it to be open. I think in their case, they're thinking, well, you know what, Valverde should be just happy to be the manager, and we'll do what we ever want to do, and he'll no longer be the manager when we deem it fit for him not to be. So they're in total control, and that's just the way Barcelona operate.
Yeah, I suppose so. I mean, it was interesting that Xavi turned around and said no. He's outside, obviously. Right, for the time being, no. But it doesn't rule out the summer, I suppose, does it, for him?
No, I see him going there. I see him going there pretty sharpish. I do believe that. It's the holy grail for him, isn't it? You know, that's his dream job. That's what he's been working hard for the last 3 seasons. You know, doing his coaching badges, and he's doing a tip-top job over in West Asia. So, yeah, he'll be there soon enough, John. I do believe that.
All right, just a bit more feedback coming in here. We're going to some interesting talking points tonight, must be said, and we've provoked Imran here. How would the football world have viewed it if it was Suarez committing such a thing instead of Valverde? Well, of course, unfortunately, Luis Suarez has suffered a serious knee injury. He's out for 4 months now, but I know where you're going with this one. Mark, it wouldn't have mattered the personality who made that last-ditch professional foul and chopped someone down. If Suarez had done it, would he have got off lightly?
Suarez would never have done it. It would have been nowhere near that. How could it have been Suarez? He's up the other end. But you're right. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who it is. If it was Ramos who done it, I don't think it'd be.
The handball in the World Cup, Suarez on the line. He got sent off and he waited in the tunnel for the penalty to be missed, and then he went running all the way around the stadium celebrating.
Yeah, okay, fine. Let's move on to Serie A, shall we, right now, because we can't leave you without going through a really fascinating weekend there. Milan, thanks to Zlatan, we'll come to in just a moment, getting a victory there. Inter held this time around, and somehow Juventus just getting the job done there. That 1-1 against Atalanta, a real setback there for them. But Lazio turning into a major talking point this season, and their run continues, John. Incredible, really, to see how they've been getting on so far. Yet, for their 10-game winning run, they're still 6 points off the lead. Yeah,
it's amazing. Lazio and Atalanta, for me, if not the two best sides, the two most fun sides to watch, and they're not even in the title race, John. Great fun. You know, I feel sorry for Roma as well, but Atalanta and Lazio, Atalanta on their budget, you know, tiny budget, being right up there. What a season this is in Serie A.
Let's get to a couple of headlines off the back of the weekend. It was a weekend that produced so much entertainment, which hopefully some of you will have seen on our channel here. 10th champions here. So Ronaldo and Demiral, the goal scorers on this occasion here. Fantastic stuff really for them. But Lazio, da Scudetto, 20 goals now for Immobile, and that is a remarkable run, as John has already said here. That is a 10-game winning streak that they've put together here. And along the way, of course, there has been a notable victory overseas in cup football as well. So this Lazio side, Mark, they're impressing everybody, aren't they? And to get to 20 goals in that league at this stage, Immobile, brilliant.
Yeah, no, absolutely brilliant. And you know what? Lazio have kind of been a little bit off the pace for a number of years now, and to see them back in that sort of position and that sort of form is refreshing. And it's refreshing for the Serie A to have more competition rather than just be Juventus running away with it every year.
Just talking about Inter and Atalanta, remarkable stuff really, for a number of reasons here, John, because you're seeing in this Inter side, again, Lukaku and Lautaro Martinez linking up here, but also crucially, Handanovic, who has a habit of doing it. He pulled off a great save towards the end, didn't he, from the penalty spot. So in the end, they were lucky to get the point.
Yeah, they were lucky to get the point against an Atalanta side that just scored goals for fun. You know, they're coming off the back of... in this game, they were coming off the back of 2 5-0 victories. And absolutely fantastic, playing some great football. And the style in the Serie A this season, wonderful fun, it really is. And some young emerging players as well. Just quickly on Lazio, Lucas Leiva, remember him, Liverpool fans? What a player he's been for Lazio. Once again, don't talk about him enough. On the John Dyke Show.
Great sting in the career tail there. One unsurprising story to bring you. Zlatan makes the headlines again. It was always going to happen this. He's become the 5th oldest goal scorer, and we've done very well here to get these guys up here. 5th oldest goal scorer for Milan. No surprise about that, John.
No surprise about that. I mean, he was leading line brilliantly. It was great to see him up there with Rafael Leao, who I think that they work really well together, and that's going to be the partnership up top. Young Rafael Leao just bombing into the channels, Zlatan going a little bit deeper, and bullying defenders as always.
All right, so that's where we're going to leave Serie A for the time being, and that's just about where we're going to have to leave Mark Schwarzer. Mark, enjoy yourself in those Tyrolean Alps and stay safe, will you?
I certainly will, guys. Enjoy.
All right, thank you very much, sir. All right, well, there we are then. Still plenty more to come on the show that I hope you're enjoying. Keep those comments flooding in, and we'll be back in about Vietnam. We're going to head in that direction right now to a player who's not involved in this competition, but instead is trying to ply his trade in the Eredivisie over there in the Netherlands. We're talking about Doan van Hal, who is a player who was part of the squad that got to the final of the AFC Under-23s last time out, but more recently he made his debut for Dutch side Heerenveen in Dutch Cup competition against Roda JC. In the wake of that, we caught up with him.
Khi mà ngày đầu tiên tôi đến đây thì tôi cảm thấy rất là tuyệt vời và hạnh phúc khi mà tôi được tập luyện và chơi bóng cùng với các đồng đội mới ở châu Âu và một nền bóng đá phát triển hơn rất nhiều. Và tôi nghĩ là không phải chỉ cá nhân tôi mà những ai mà được đi ra nước ngoài, được đi sang một nền bóng đá cao như vậy, chơi bóng thì đó là một điều tuyệt vời đối với họ. Tôi nghĩ là thời gian đó là một thời gian những phút được vào sân thi đấu đó thì là những phút quý giá của tôi, và tôi nghĩ là sẽ làm cho tôi có thêm nhiều động lực hơn nữa để tôi cố gắng hơn nữa ở chặng đường tiếp theo, và tôi sẽ phải cố gắng để được huấn luyện viên tin tưởng và cho ra sân nhiều hơn nữa. Tôi đến đây thì tôi học được rất nhiều. Tôi học được trong các buổi tập các đồng đội của mình. Ở đây thì một nền bóng đá rất là phát triển và chuyên nghiệp, và tôi học được những thứ chuyên nghiệp tại đây. Tôi học từ những đồng đội và những huấn luyện viên đã chỉ dạy cho tôi những điều mà tôi còn thiếu.
So the learning curve continues for a player who really has been shining on the regional stage. Now, of course, he made his name at club level with his club, Hanoi FC. He's actually on loan from them to Heerenveen right now. But at international level, it was at the age group, under 23s in 2018, of course, before becoming a winner of the Suzuki Cup, and then scoring 2 in their 3-0 victory against Indonesia in the final of the SEA Games. This is a player who's got an awful lot ahead of him. Well, John Wilkinson is someone who has seen plenty of Van Gaal during the course of his career. He's versatile, we know that much, and it sounds as if he's soaking it up over there in Holland.
Yes, certainly. Speaks really well, making all the right noises. He's there because he is a leader. He's incredibly professional anyway. And can play in a variety of positions. I prefer him in a back three. I think he's much more comfortable, loves to bring the ball into midfield. Lovely left foot. Actually, he's very two-footed. And, a tall boy, aggressive as well. Like all the Vietnamese playing international football at the moment. Very, very aggressive, John.
Yeah, I've seen him take free kicks for Hanoi. We've obviously seen him score goals with his feet and with his head, as we saw in the SEA Games. But it was the under-23 tournament, the AFC one, that really saw this group of Vietnam players come through and saw him grow with the rest, right?
Yeah, all of the young Vietnamese coming up through those under-23s are all very comfortable with the ball at their feet. They didn't rely on being aggressive. They didn't rely on just the physicality and just filling in the gaps. They wanted the ball. All very brave. And being brave in football doesn't mean going over the top of the ball. It means wanting the ball, demanding the ball in uncomfortable areas. He's great at that.
Where do you like him playing? He can play as a left-sided defender. He can play as a centre-half. What works best?
I like him in a back three. I like it when there's somebody maybe a little bit more aggressive that likes to go and win it first. I like him just dropping off a little bit. Left side of defence, I think he's brilliant. I think he really is great. And then he brings it into midfield and overloads the opposition there.
Let's talk a little bit about where he might go. We can speculate on how much football he might get for Heerenveen or not. I mean, will he be in the frame for the Heracles game this weekend? We don't know. But what he can do is follow in the footsteps